Sometimes life has a way of flipping the script, when arrogance meets destiny, and laughter turns into silence. What happens when those who mock end up begging at the feet of the one they once humiliated? This is not just a story about revenge, it's a story about dignity, resilience, and the unpredictable tables of fate. The mansion glowed like a castle of gold under the evening sky. Expensive cars lined the driveway, their polished exteriors reflecting the shimmering lights strung across the white-pillared estate. The Douglas family, old money, powerful influence, and untouchable arrogance, was hosting yet another of their glamorous parties. The ballroom brimmed with politicians, CEOs, celebrities, and socialites, all sipping champagne and laughing as if the world outside of their walls didn't exist. Their gatherings were infamous for extravagance but also notorious for a quiet cruelty, the kind that dressed itself as humor. To be invited was to feel important. To be mocked was to understand how fragile acceptance in their world really was. Amid the laughter and chatter, a woman in a simple yet elegant black dress walked in. She was not adorned with diamonds or expensive perfume. Her presence was understated, but her poise was undeniable. Her name was Naomi Carter. She wasn't a billionaire, nor was she from a family name carved into the marble of history. Yet, she carried herself with a grace that should have commanded respect. Instead, whispers rippled through the room. "Who invited her?" one guest muttered. "She doesn't belong here," another scoffed. The Douglas family noticed her too, particularly Victoria Douglas, the matriarch, who prided herself on social order. Naomi had been invited quietly by one of the younger guests, who admired her work in community development. But here, surrounded by wealth, she looked like an intruder in their eyes. The first laugh was soft, coming from a corner. Then another. Soon, the ridicule rolled across the room like a wave. "Did she mistake this for a fundraiser?" a man said loudly, his voice dripping with mockery. "Look at her shoes," Victoria sneered, her diamond necklace catching the light as her lips curled into a smirk. "Probably from a thrift store." Naomi heard every word, felt every piercing stare, but she didn't flinch. She simply smiled, a smile that carried a mystery, as if she knew something they didn't. She excused herself quietly, sipping only water, standing near the balcony as the rich indulged in their cruelty. To them, she was an outsider, a black woman in their world of ivory privilege. They thought she would shrink away in shame. They thought they were untouchable. What they didn't know was that Naomi Carter wasn't just any guest. She was about to become the storm that would shake the very foundation of everything they owned. Long before she set foot into that mansion, Naomi's life had been anything but easy. Born in a poor neighborhood, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs, Naomi grew up with hand-me-downs and empty fridges. She learned early what hunger felt like, but she also learned what resilience meant. While other children played, she studied. While her mother struggled, she helped, cleaning houses, babysitting, anything to bring a few extra dollars home. At 16, she earned a scholarship that changed her trajectory. At first, she felt like a stranger in universities filled with privilege, but her brilliance couldn't be denied. She studied economics and business management with a hunger fueled by every insult she had ever endured. She worked days at cafes and nights at libraries, building not just knowledge but vision. Naomi understood something many didn't: wealth wasn't just about money, it was about systems, ownership, and leverage. By 25, she started her first company, a modest logistics startup. Investors laughed at her too, saying, "Who would trust a young black woman with millions of dollars worth of goods?" But Naomi didn't wait for their approval. She built trust with smaller businesses, offering affordable and reliable services. Within 5 years, her company expanded into multiple states, dominating supply chains that larger corporations had ignored. But Naomi didn't stop there. She bought into real estate, renewable energy, and tech innovations. Every failure became a lesson, every rejection a stepping stone. Her empire grew silently but powerfully, reaching corners of industries people didn't realize she controlled. By the time she walked into the Douglas mansion, she was not just a guest, she was one of the largest silent shareholders in several companies the Douglas family depended on. She wasn't there by accident, she was there because destiny had placed her directly in the room of those who once believed they ruled the world. Months passed after the party, and the Douglas family thought little of Naomi. To them, she was just another face to laugh at, forgotten the moment the champagne glasses were emptied. But the cracks in their empire had already begun. Their investments started facing unexpected obstacles, supply chains failing, real estate deals collapsing, energy costs soaring. Behind those collapses was a name they hadn't yet noticed: Naomi Carter. When the Douglas family called emergency meetings, they discovered something chilling. The contracts they had relied on for decades, the shipping routes, the distribution centers, the renewable energy grids, were no longer under their control. Someone else owned the rights. Someone else had leverage over their billion-dollar businesses. And that someone was Naomi. The realization hit like thunder. At first, they refused to believe it. That woman? Victoria spat during a meeting. Impossible. But numbers didn't lie. Naomi Carter was not just a competitor. She was the key to their survival. The same woman they mocked in their golden ballroom now had the power to shut them down with a single decision. They tried to reach her, sending polite emails, arranging business meetings. Naomi's assistant responded with cold professionalism: "Ms. Carter's schedule is full." For the first time, the Douglas family felt what it was like to be on the outside, unwanted and dismissed. Their laughter had turned into sleepless nights. Their arrogance had turned into desperation. And Naomi? She remembered every sneer, every whisper, every look of superiority. But she didn't rush for revenge. She waited, watching them sweat, until the moment came when they would have no choice but to face her, not as a guest they mocked, but as the woman who held the keys to everything they needed. The confrontation came in the same mansion where it all began. This time, however, the lights weren't as bright, and the laughter was gone. The Douglas family had invited Naomi personally, not as a guest of pity but as a last hope. Their empire was collapsing, and only her intervention could save it. As Naomi walked through the grand doors, every eye turned. The same people who once mocked her now stood in silence, their faces pale with anxiety. Victoria, once dripping with arrogance, now looked fragile. "Ms. Carter," she began, her voice trembling, "we'd like to discuss a partnership." Naomi's eyes scanned the room, her calmness unsettling them even more. She took her seat at the head of the table, the place where Douglas men once ruled, and let the silence stretch. "Funny," she finally said, her voice steady, "how tables turn. Not long ago, I stood in this house as the subject of your laughter. Now, you call me here because without me, your legacy crumbles." No one dared to speak. Naomi leaned forward. "I don't need to humiliate you. Life already did that. I will not destroy you, though I could. Instead, I'll do something far more powerful. I'll own you, and you'll work for me." The Douglas family froze. She slid a stack of papers across the table, contracts that would shift controlling interests of their companies into her name. "Sign them, and you'll keep your seats. Refuse, and you'll lose everything by the end of the month." Hands trembling, the Douglas family signed. They had no choice. In that moment, the laughter of the past turned into the silence of defeat. Naomi didn't smile, she didn't gloat. She stood, gathering the papers, and said, "Remember this night, because I will. Not because you mocked me, but because dignity is the greatest revenge." As she left the mansion, the Douglas family sat in silence, realizing they were no longer the kings of the world. The woman they laughed at now owned everything they needed. Naomi Carter had not just survived their cruelty, she had conquered it. And the world outside, hungry for stories of justice, would soon know her name not as the woman mocked, but as the woman who rose above and claimed her place with grace. Never underestimate anyone. The people you laugh at today might be the ones holding your future tomorrow. Naomi's story reminds us that dignity and perseverance will always outshine arrogance. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Kindness Vibes for more true stories of resilience and transformation. Your one share could inspire 1,000 lives.